Let's dispel something right now. The Myles Garrett trade request is about more than a contract dispute. I'll tell you why. Coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer German, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast. I'm proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. Some believe that Myles Garrett's public trade request is a leverage move by the star pass rusher for a new contract, but that just ain't true. I'll tell you why. Also, Myles Garrett may actually be doing the Browns a favor here by making his trade request public, and in the name of blowing it up, that doesn't stop at just the players. It also extends in the front office and likely includes Andrew Berry. I do want to thank you for being an everyday with the Locked On Browns podcast and making us your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. And download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. So we already know Myles Garrett requested a trade. That's going to be the conversation throughout the week. Nothing's going to change that. It is the story of stories. In a lot of ways, it sort of upstaged the start of Super Bowl week. It upstaged the Chiefs and the Eagles. And plenty of speculation about what this means. The Browns have dug in and said they're not trading him. We heard that obviously as well already. But one thing that I want to dispel is the notion that this is a leverage play by Garrett to get a contract extension. And I sort of laid this out in Monday's episode. I related it to a relationship. And early on in the relationship, yeah, you can screw up or you can say you want to break up and maybe there's a way to reconcile and get back together. Once you've been married together this long and you play the card of divorce, trade in the sense of sports, and you want out, it's hard to come back from that. And I understand there's been some examples of guys recently requesting trades and they stay with their team. Trey Hendrickson, another elite pass rusher, just did it with the Bengals last year, and he ended up staying in Cincinnati. So maybe they figure it out. And obviously money talks, where if the Browns throw $50 million a year at him, maybe he stops caring so much about going somewhere else and he's happy in Cleveland. Who knows? There's always a price tag. But to me, if Garrett was doing this just for leverage and contract negotiations and trying to essentially up his price tag, the Browns have already said they were going to pay him first and foremost. They made it clear they were going to work, that there was talks of how they have plans to extend him and make him a Brown for life. So I don't think that was even a question to begin with. But also this feels like an escalation. He played that card already of, hey, if you guys don't have the same goals as me, if you're not trying to win next season, I'm open to playing somewhere else. So I want to hear what the plan is for the offseason. He already said those things. He said them in week 16 of the season, late in the year, and it raised our eyebrows then that he was even talking about it and leaving that door open for the first time to potentially play somewhere other than Cleveland. So to me, that was when he made the leverage play. That was when he could have just used this as a tactic to set the stage for contract negotiations. This feels different. Like I said, the word I used was an escalation. This feels like an escalation to, nope, you know what? I am not on the same page with this organization anymore, and I want out, and I want to go to a true contender. And I know winning has always been priority number one, Myles Garrett. I think that's an important thing to know, because yes, the individual accolades are great. And every player obviously wants to accomplish some of those individual things, win defensive player of the year, which is basically MVP for the defensive side of the ball. Be talked about as one of the all-time greats. But Garrett is, I think one of the more telling comments he made this season was when he became the first player, the fastest player to 100 sacks. He did it before he's 29, and recording his 14 sacks in a season for the fourth straight year. Those are things that nobody else has really ever accomplished, that he was in uncharted territory with some of the all-time greats. And Lawrence Taylor's name came up as one of those players. And he said, yeah, that's awesome to be mentioned with those guys, but those players, LT, for example, was great because he won the grandest prize. He won Super Bowls. And that's what I want to do. He has always made it clear on some level, the personal stuff matters. The personal accolades matter, But Garrett truly, in his heart of hearts, wants nothing more than to win, than to compete for championships. And we thought the Browns were closer than this a year ago in 2023 when they make the playoffs with the ghost of Joe Flacco. But this year they took a massive step back. It showed that the organization maybe isn't in a position to compete sooner rather than later. And Garrett clearly has caught on to that and feels like he wants out. I talked about it already yesterday, but if they go through with the trade, it's got to be a rebuild. It's got to be a get draft capital and try to rebuild this thing from the ground up. Get as many draft as many players as possible that are young and up and coming that can start turning the tide for this organization and get you back to prominence quickly. There's no other way to sort of go about it. You just have to embrace that part of this reality that you're now living in. Because Myles Garrett is the type of guy that, being the cornerstone player he is, that changes the math on your offseason plans. So again, this doesn't just feel like it's negotiation tactics and the chess game that is working out a new contract. This feels bigger than that. He put a note out there for the world to see requesting a trade. In millennial speak, in today's day and age, that is the ultimate sign that you no longer want to be part of the organization. And to take it a step further, he took a direct shot at the GM and Andrew Berry by using his own words against him and saying the goal was never to go from Cleveland to Canton. The goal was to win Super Bowls. I mean, that's about as fiery and as blatant as possible that you could see a player like take a shot at their own organization or their own front office or whatever it might be. I mean, strong message sent. And because of the tone, because of how strong the message felt in the moment, and reading that note and seeing it make its ways and make its rounds on the internet on Monday, again, this does not just feel like it's something as simple as, well, hey, let's work out a contract and I have the leverage here. This feels like he legitimately wants out of the organization. And we'll see what happens. We could be in for a standoff here. We could be in for the Browns digging their feet and saying, we're not trading you. And Myles Garrett's going to have to sort of reconcile that and let this, mend fences the best they can and go from there. I don't know. And maybe, again, there's a price tag that they throw at him that gets him to renege his trade requests and back down. I don't know. But as things stand today, I think this is a legitimate trade request. I think this is Myles Garrett signaling he doesn't want to be part of this organization anymore. We'll see if the Browns oblige. They may not. What that means, though, like, things could get ugly. Like he is one of the best players in this league. He can make it as ugly as he wants to make it if he really truly wants out. And hopefully we don't get to that point, but that very well could happen. And so again, I just think anybody who feels or is trying to suggest that it's just a negotiation ploy or tactic, I don't buy that, because he already kind of did that late in the season. This is different. This is as big of a statement as you can make in today's day and age to suggest that you're done or over in a situation or an organization. And so I think this is legitimate. And now it's just about how they sort it out from here. If he gets traded and they appease him, the Browns are saying they won't. But there's always something. There's always the Godfather offer out there. And that could also be the point of this too, is a team that digs their feet in and says, we're not trading you. Oftentimes that is just to up the price. Like, we're not trading you, so send us your Godfather offers, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And then the teams come in with like, well, hey, here, take 2 firsts instead of just 1 first and a couple other picks. And then maybe they're like, all right, we'll pull the trigger now. So we'll see. But a lot to still happen, a lot to still play out. But as I said yesterday, this to me does pivot your plans for the offseason, which I think initially centered around we're going to try to stay competitive. Clearly, that's what they pitched Myles Garrett on in the first place. That's changed. And as somber and frustrating as Monday was with this trade request from Myles Garrett, I actually think a silver lining could be that it's provided the Browns with some necessary clarity. I will talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to make it even more exciting than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, PrizePicks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. Here's how it works. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players' projections, and if you're right, you can win it to 1,000 times your cash. PrizePicks even has a free pick for the big game where Patrick Mahomes just needs to throw for 1 yard to win. Pair that with one more correct pick, and you're cashing out, I'm already looking at trying to pair it with Travis Kelce getting more receiving yards than whatever the total is after his quiet AFC Championship game. And also, don't forget that you can take advantage of the promo tab to tail any of the super sweet Millie Winners big game lineups, which is a promo where if you tail a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can split winnings of $1 million in promo funds. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's PrizePicks. Run your game. All right, so listen, I understand there's not a lot of positives there's not a lot of warm and fuzzies that come with your star player. And frankly, the second best player to ever play for this franchise in Myles Garrett. I think the order probably goes Jim Brown and Myles Garrett. It's not, there's no positive spin really to put on this situation and make you feel better if you're a Browns fan, or make you feel the warm and fuzzies about this organization and where they're headed and the direction that they're going in. I get that. But there might sort of be a silver lining here in the fact that Myles Garrett requesting a trade does give the Browns some very necessary clarity, because this offseason they were kind of in a weird purgatory-like spot where you could try to figure it out and stay competitive, which is what I did encourage them to do while you still have cornerstone players like Myles Garrett on this roster. You cannot waste their prime years, just wasting away on a rebuilding team. You just can't do it. And so I was pushing for that to be what they did. I said, maybe you can figure it out with one of these veterans like a Kirk Cousins, and maybe draft a rookie too and pair them together and see who, and it's starting to sound more and more like that is what the Browns are going to do. And you're kind of off and running that way where you got some different options and you're still trying to win and whatnot. But the other side of the coin was, here's maybe a better way to look at it. Are they closer to what they were in 2023 when they made the playoffs and they just needed consistent quarterback play? Or are they closer to what they were in 2024 where they were a 3-14 team? I felt going into this offseason, and as long as you have Myles Garrett in-house, that you were closer to what you were in 2023. And then it took some guys probably playing a little bit better than they did this past year on both sides of the ball. Getting back to Stefanski's offense, I think, was going to be key. And obviously finding the right quarterback to lead the charge. Those are all going to be key things that played out this offseason that maybe dictated whether or not the Browns get back to being a playoff contender, or they're closer to 3-14 like they were this past year. We will see. But they were sort of stuck in two different worlds there, where you could lean into the tank and just embrace the fact that this window's closed, or you could keep trying for the sake of trying because you have too many guys on this roster that you owe it to stay competitive. And Myles saying he wants out, it gives the Browns the clarity that they need to now just stop pretending that there's something that they're not and move forward into a new era, a new generation, a new phase of Browns football that revolves around, again, rebuilding. It allows you to finally embrace the reality that of what you are. What do they say? Like the stages of grief, and the first one is like acceptance that it happened. Myles Garrett jolting the organization, sending seismic shockwaves through it by saying he wants out officially, publicly in the letter. It's stunning. It's hard to wrap your head around. It's not something that you can come to grips with very easily. I get that, from the fans to the organization themselves. But once they come to that reality, and once they accept the fate that they're in, and they can again get they have the acceptance that they now know where they're at, that is when they can start moving forward. And that's what this organization has to do. What's unfortunate is it felt like they were starting to be able to move forward off at least the Deshaun Watson debacle, disaster, embarrassment, whatever words you want to use to describe it. It felt like they were finally able to they were able to sort of pivot away from that finally, with him rupturing his Achilles and understanding he wasn't going to be on the team next year or around the team next year. It was a chance to sort of put that behind them and move forward with the guys that were still here that you feel good about. This now, I think, extends the embarrassment from that trade and makes it more, everlasting and impactful, because that deal has single-handedly now turned your organization into got this organization. It's closed the championship window. brought a whole bunch of embarrassment along with it, and now it's driving away your best player, and again, the second best player in the history of the franchise. That's not great. That's not any outcome that they expected when they traded for Deshaun Watson. And so it does make that sort of linger a little bit longer and realize how the ramifications of it. But it also does allow you to, if they end up trading Myles Garrett like they probably should, and get the picks and start building for the future, that's the fastest way to get the organization back on track, get a sense of direction in terms of where the organization is going. And frankly, to let the healing process begin for these fans that obviously deserve so much better. And I do feel bad for Browns fans here. You as a Browns fan, others as Browns fans, this entire community, Cleveland, which I love, because like you deserve better. Frankly, you did. You deserved better than the Deshaun Watson debacle. You deserve better than having to lose your favorite player because they acquired a quarterback with plenty of controversy surrounding him, and that clearly just had lost it with everything that he went through or everything that he experienced off the field. And finally, it felt like you had a winning organization, and it all went up in smoke because of one terribly rotten decision that the organization made. And this is, again, part of the ramifications of that, where you are right now. But the fastest way to heal, the fastest way to get the fan base to move through this phase of apathy that you felt in real time at the stadium last year. Like, I'm not even kidding. You could tell that there was just an apathetic feeling in that stadium every single game. After like the playoffs were no longer there was a moment in the first Ravens game at Huntington Bank Field where, you know, there was the Jim Donovan sort of the aura of him, his presence at that game after he had passed away, that led you to pull off the stunning upset over Baltimore with Jameis Winston at quarterback. And so there were some good vibes that day. There was a couple, the Steelers game was another one. There were some moments, but once like playoffs were out of the question and the team just kept losing, everyone just remembered like how the season started, how they got here. And it was just apathy. Like people had checked out on this team, which is sad because this team is so ingrained in the fabric of the city in this area. And to see that happen, I never thought I'd see the day that people just did not care. But that's what it felt like. And the only way to heal that and get past that and get people back on board with caring about this organization, mind you, when you have a new dome that you're trying to sell to them and get them to buy PSLs for and higher ticket prices, the only way to do that is to embrace who you are and start building this organization back from the ground up and get new faces in here, new players in here to erase this era, this disastrous era that is now officially coming to an end, and that trading Myles Garrett would certainly bring to a screeching halt officially and close the door on. So Myles Garrett, though, kind of makes that decision for you. You don't have to now flirt with like, who are we? Are we this or are we that? You're not going through an identity crisis anymore. If Myles Garrett wants out, and as long as you're going to trade him, which again, they probably should, because they just need to embrace this situation that they're in, the decision's been made for you, and you no longer have to hide or try to run from what is coming and what is looming and delaying the inevitable, if you will. As we talk about blowing it up, though, it extends beyond just the players. Andrew Berry shouldn't be free of blame here either. He is not exempt from a potential rebuild for this organization, and we'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. It was a glorious college football season for me personally because my Ohio State Buckeyes ended up winning the national championship. And I got to say, I got to see the Buckeyes in person this year. My wife and I, we went to the Michigan game. Very disappointing result. Who knew it would be the inflection point that actually led them to winning the national championship? And we now get to say that we saw the Ohio State Buckeyes, the national championship team in 2024, in person. And it was all thanks to Gametime. I'll tell you, my ticket buying experience went so smoothly ahead of the game that Gametime has now become my go-to app for buying tickets. Plus, they have a new feature called Gametime Picks, which makes it so much easier to get picks to your favorite events by allowing you to filter out the fluff. Essentially, it shows you the only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. So I've made it clear. Trading Myles Garrett, his trade request, it officially means this organization should embrace the blowing it up crowd. That's been, some of you have been loud and banging the drum for a while now, for several weeks since the end of the season. Now it's official. You have to embrace that. You have to become. You just have to turn. You got to turn the page here and start the rebuild. And I think it's important to note, though, because you think about rebuild, you think about like, okay, you need to draft players, you need a new quarterback, you need this, you need that. But rebuilds extend beyond just the roster. They extend beyond the players that go out and play and put their blood, sweat, and tears into the games each and every single week. The front office is part of this too. And so because of that, Andrew Berry is not exempt here. If they go full rebuild, I have my doubts about him being the guy to use the picks that he is then accumulating from a potential Myles Garrett trade. I've had my doubts from the beginning about him picking any players going into this offseason, because look what picking players has got the Browns to this point. They traded their 3 first-rounders from 2022 to 2024, and when you do that, you're banking on the fact that like you will identify talents in later rounds of the draft that will be able to supplement this roster and be future players for you. I don't know that Andrew Berry didn't do that. He didn't hit on enough guys to accomplish that goal. And so what has he proven over the years to make you think that he is some ace draft analyst that is going to be able, or evaluator that's going to be able to identify the right players and pick the right players to help this franchise move forward into a new era, a new beginning, a new future that's hopefully brighter than this one that's ending. It's about trust. And I just don't trust Andrew Berry to do that. I don't trust him to be that guy. So like without Myles Garrett here, it feels like he is very much a dead man walking anyway. Like, what is the point of bringing him back and keeping him around to draft players that he probably won't even be here to manage beyond next year? And you could make the same argument for Kevin Stefanski. I have continued to say, and I stand by this, Kevin Stefanski, to me, is part of the solution more so than the problem. I think Kevin should be empowered here this offseason to take more control. It sounds like that's the case, at least with the quarterback position. He was more present at the Senior Bowl. He was more present at some of these offseason activities already. And so he's making it known like, hey, I'm having a say in this quarterback. I'm trying to help identify what we need at this position because we need to find the right guy for my system, my offense, for this team. And that to me is evident. Give him more power. Let him be empowered to choose the GM that works for him if you're going to move on from Andrew Berry. And I get it's late in the game, but it's not unprecedented. I remember the year where Sean McDermott was brought in to be the head coach of the Bills. They fired their GM Doug Whaley right after the draft. He stayed for the draft, then he was fired. It was basically Sean McDermott making most of the picks. Or like with his insight, or like what the new direction of the team was kind of like he was making the picks in their honor, and then he was fired shortly after that, and then Brandon Beane comes in April. So it's not unprecedented to hire a GM later on in the process or in the cycle. You just are gonna have to wait till after the draft. So I guess that comes down to like whether or not you trust Kevin Stefanski to be the guy kind of leading the charge on what the team needs and picks and players, and the rest of Andrew Berry's staff that he leaves behind to be the people identifying those things. We'll see. And that's up to you to choose if you believe that or not, or trust that or not. I still stand by, though, that I think Kevin Stefanski can still be the right coach for this team, and that he is more so part of the solution than the problem for where this organization is headed. Berry, I have my doubts about. And again, if you're trading Myles Garrett, the goal here is get draft capital, get as many picks as possible for this year, for next year. And let's turn over this roster with young up-and-coming talents that can be future players and stars for us, and get this back on track sooner rather than later. If that's the goal, what is the point of having a GM make those picks when you could be faced with another dreadful losing season, and then you're getting like those guys are getting the boot anyways? Stefanski probably does too. Like it just seems silly to me. Like if looking back, the only thing that was really saving them was the fact that they had a roster in place that generally had a lot of talent and could still maybe be competitive. That goes out the window without Myles Garrett. And so what's the point? If it becomes a lame duck year for all these guys, what's the point? And I think it becomes a lame duck year even more specifically for Andrew Berry than anybody, which is why I'm sort of pointing more so at him. But that's the big dilemma here. The big dilemma truly is, do you trust Andrew Berry to be the guy to take a team that is rebuilding or starting over and be the guy to forge this new future and bring in the players necessary to get this team back on track? I don't. You have to decide how you feel about that. But you might as well bring in a different voice and a different perspective because, again, if it's another bad year anyway, you're probably bringing a new GM in. And wouldn't you have liked to have that GM also make this year's picks that could help, set up the foundation of this franchise for years to come? Because we see it all the time. New regimes come in with teams that blow it up or start fresh with coaches and GMs and everything, and they don't keep the other regime's guys anyway. The Browns, this current Browns regime was an extenuating circumstance because there was enough good players here from the previous regime, the John Dorsey regime, that they felt they needed to pay and keep these guys around. Nick Chubb, Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward. They weren't going to let those guys walk because they were some of the best in the NFL at their respective positions. So this was an extenuating circumstance. But far too often you see coaches, GMs, whatever, new people come in and say, you know what? This wasn't my guy. I want to get my own players. And so we're going to trade this guy, trade that guy, cut this guy, cut that guy. They don't care. And so you'd rather have 2 years worth of a new GM or a new front office sort of structure picking these players, or even if it's Stefanski sort of leading the charge and he gets to pick his new GM, like whatever direction you want this thing to go, that the people that you're looking to be the future brass of this organization, they need to be the ones making the picks the next 2 years, because that's what trading Myles Garrett is about. It's about draft accumulation, draft capital accumulation, and using those picks on the right players to get the franchise in a place of contention sooner with the young up-and-coming talents that Barry just could not hit on. And so I question now, like, what the point of keeping him around is long-term, this offseason and beyond, if that ends up being the goal, which is part of the reason why I'm sure he's digging his feet in and saying he's not going to trade him, because he knows if he trades Myles Garrett, he's pretty much a dead man walking anyway, because that's his golden ticket. His golden ticket is having Myles Garrett on this roster and trying to stay competitive. That's going to do it for another episode with you, Dog Pound. Plenty more to discuss and so many more tentacles to the Myles Garrett trade request that we'll get into throughout the rest of the week. Thank you for joining me as always to talk about this crazy trade situation, your favorite football team, even in a frustrating week that it is. I hope you continue to make us your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out one of the new Locked On NFL shows, or you can keep it local. Check out Locked On Cavs, Locked On Guardians. Thanks for being an everydayer at the Locked On Podcast Network. I will talk to you again real soon, Cleveland. Peace.